The Loch Ness Monster, Scottish Gaelic, Eobus Lochneach, affectionately known as Nessie, is a creature in Scottish folklore that is said to inhabit Loch Ness in the Scottish Highlands. It is often described as large, long-necked, and with one or more humps protruding from the water. Popular interest and belief in the creature has varied since it was brought to worldwide attention in 1933. Evidence of its existence is anecdotal, with a number of disputed photographs and sonar readings. The scientific community explains alleged sightings of the Loch Ness Monster as hoaxes, wishful thinking, and the misidentification of mundane objects. The pseudoscience and subculture of cryptozoology has placed particular emphasis on the creature. In August 1933, the Courier published the account of George Spicer's alleged sighting. Public interest skyrocketed, with countless letters being sent in detailing different sightings describing a monster fish, sea serpent, or dragon, with the final name ultimately settling on Loch Ness Monster. Since the 1940s, the creature has been affectionately called Nessie, Scottish Gaelic, Niceag. St. Columba 565. The earliest report of a monster in the vicinity of Loch Ness appears in the Life of St. Columba by Adamnan, written in the 6th century AD. According to Adamnan, writing about a century after the events described, Irish monk St. Columba was staying in the land of the Picts with his companions when he encountered local residents burying a man by the River Ness. They explained that the man was swimming in the river when he was attacked by a water beast that mauled him and dragged him underwater despite their attempts to rescue him by boat. Columba sent a follower, Luigin Macumin, to swim across the river. The beast approached him, but Columba made the sign of the cross and said, "Go no further. Do not touch the man. Go back at once." The creature stopped as if it had been pulled back with ropes and fled, and Columba's men and the Picts gave thanks for what they perceived as a miracle. Believers in the monster point to this story, set in the River Ness rather than the loch itself, as evidence for the creature's existence as early as the 6th century. Skeptics question the narrative's reliability, noting that water beast stories were extremely common in medieval hagiographies, and Adamnan's tale probably recycles a common motif attached to a local landmark. According to skeptics, Adamnan's story may be independent of the modern Loch Ness Monster legend and became attached to it by believers seeking to bolster their claims. Ronald Binns considers that this is the most serious of various alleged early sightings of the monster, but all other claimed sightings before 1933 are dubious and do not prove a monster tradition before that date. 14. Christopher Kearney uses a specific historical and cultural analysis of Adamnan to separate Adamnan's story about St. Columba from the modern myth of the Loch Ness Monster, but finds an earlier and culturally significant use of Celtic water beast folklore along the way. In doing so, he also discredits any strong connection between Kelpies or water horses and the modern media-augmented creation of the Loch Ness Monster. He also concludes that the story of St. Columba may have been impacted by earlier Irish myths about the Caranach and an Oilifist. D. Mackenzie 1871 or 1872. In October 1871 or 1872, D. Mackenzie of Bownan reportedly saw an object resembling a log or an upturned boat wriggling and churning up the water, moving slowly at first before disappearing at a faster speed. The account was not published until 1934, when Mackenzie sent his story in a letter to Rupert Gould shortly after popular interest in the monster increased. Alexander MacDonald 1888. In 1888, Mason Alexander MacDonald of Abriachan sighted a large stubby-legged animal surfacing from the loch and propelling itself within 50 yards of the shore where MacDonald stood. MacDonald reported his sighting to Loch Ness water bailiff Alex Campbell, and described the creature as looking like a salamander. Aldi Mackay 1933. The best-known article that first attracted a great deal of attention about a creature was published on May 2, 1933 in the Inverness Courier about a large beast or whale-like fish. The article by Alex Campbell, water bailiff for Loch Ness and a part-time journalist citation needed, discussed a sighting by Aldi Mackay of an enormous creature with the body of a whale rolling in the water in the loch while she and her husband John were driving on the A82 on April 15, 1933. The word monster was reportedly applied for the first time in Campbell's article, although some reports claim that it was coined by editor Evan Barron. The Courier in 2017 published excerpts from the Campbell article, which had been titled Strange Spectacle in Loch Ness. The creature disported itself rolling and plunging for fully a minute, its body resembling that of a whale, and the water cascading and churning like a simmering cauldron. Soon, however, it disappeared in a boiling mass of foam. Both onlookers confessed that there was something uncanny about the whole thing, for they realized that here was no ordinary denizen of the depths because, apart from its enormous size, the beast, in taking the final plunge, sent out waves that were big enough to have been caused by a passing steamer. According to a 2013 article, Mackay said that she had yelled, "Stop the beast," when viewing the spectacle. In the late 1980s, a naturalist interviewed Aldi Mackay, and she admitted to knowing that there had been an oral tradition of a beast in the loch well before her claimed sighting. Alex Campbell's 1933 article also stated that Loch Ness has for generations been credited with being the home of a fearsome-looking monster. George Spicer 1933. Modern interest in the monster was sparked by a sighting on July 22, 1933, when George Spicer and his wife saw a most extraordinary form of animal cross the road in front of their car. They described the creature as having a large body about 4 feet 1.2 meters high and 25 feet 8 meters long, and a long wavy, narrow neck slightly thicker than an elephant's trunk and as long as the 10-12 foot 3-4 meters width of the road. They saw no limbs. It lurched across the road toward the loch 20 yards 20 meters away, leaving a trail of broken undergrowth in its wake. Spicer described it as the nearest approach to a dragon or prehistoric animal that I have ever seen in my life, and as having a long neck, which moved up and down in the manner of a scenic railway. It had an animal in its mouth and had a body that was fairly big with a high back, but if there were any feet they must have been of the web kind, and as for a tail I cannot say, as it moved so rapidly, and when we got to the spot it had probably disappeared into the loch. On August 4, 1933, the Courier published a report of Spicer's sighting. This sighting triggered a massive amount of public interest and an uptick in alleged sightings, leading to the solidification of the actual name Loch Ness Monster. It has been claimed that sightings of the monster increased after a road was built along the loch in early 1933, bringing workers and tourists to the formerly isolated area. However, Binns has described this as the myth of the Lonely Loch, as it was far from isolated before then due to the construction of the Caledonian Canal. In the 1930s, the existing road by the side of the loch was given a serious upgrade. Hugh Gray 1933. Hugh Gray's photograph taken near Foyers on November 12, 1933 was the first photograph alleged to depict the monster. It was slightly blurred, and it has been noted that if one looks closely the head of a dog can be seen. Gray had taken his Labrador for a walk that day, and it is suspected that the photograph depicts his dog fetching a stick from the loch. Others have suggested that the photograph depicts an otter or a swan. The original negative was lost. However, in 1963, Maurice Burton came into possession of 2 lantern slides, contact positives from the original negative, and when projected onto a screen they revealed an otter rolling at the surface in characteristic fashion. Arthur Grant 1934. Sketch of the Arthur Grant sighting. On January 5, 1934, a motorcyclist, Arthur Grant, claimed to have nearly hit the creature while approaching a Briachen, near the northeastern end of the loch at about 1 a.m. on a moonlit night. According to Grant, it had a small head attached to a long neck. The creature saw him, and crossed the road back to the loch. Grant, a veterinary student, described it as a cross between a seal and a plesiosaur. He said he dismounted and followed it to the loch, but saw only ripples. Grant produced a sketch of the creature that was examined by zoologist Maurice Burton, who stated it was consistent with the appearance and behavior of an otter. Regarding the long size of the creature reported by Grant, it has been suggested that this was a faulty observation due to the poor light conditions. Paleontologist Darren Nage has suggested that Grant may have seen either an otter or a seal, and exaggerated his sighting over time. Surgeon's photograph 1934. The surgeon's photograph is reportedly the first photo of the creature's head and neck. Supposedly taken by Robert Kenneth Wilson, a London gynecologist, it was published in the Daily Mail on April 21, 1934. Wilson's refusal to have his name associated with it led to it being known as the surgeon's photograph. According to Wilson, he was looking at the loch when he saw the monster, grabbed his camera, and snapped 4 photos. Only 2 exposures came out clearly. The first reportedly shows a small head and back, and the second shows a similar head in a diving position. The first photo became well known, and the second attracted little publicity because of its blurriness. For 60 years the photo was considered evidence of the monster's existence, although skeptics dismissed it as driftwood, an elephant, an otter, or a bird. The photos